I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre grey, and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. Tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyres, and all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fires. The land's sharp features seemed to be the century's corpse outlent, his crypts the cloudy canopy, the wind his death lament. The ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken hard and dry, and every spirit on the earth seemed fervorless as I. Hello everyone. That was the beginning of Thomas Hardy's poem The Darkling Thrush, written in winter 1899. The booming Victorian age had come to an end, modern science was stripping the world of its faith, the powers in Europe were beginning to build great weapons of war, and a new century was trundling bleakly in. And at the end of 2022, it's hard not to feel a little bleak myself. The world is still readjusting after the pandemic, there's the cost of living crisis, the media stoking an imaginary culture war, an actual war in Ukraine, strikes, fear of climate breakdown, government corruption scandals, people trying to ban my wild camping, and the mullets coming back into style. So here at the solstice, let's see if we can't escape all of that and find some solace in nature. There is a second half to that Thomas Hardy verse, by the way, where the Darkling Thrush in the title begins to sing, and if I can find such a bird to accompany me, I'd love to finish the poem. Do song thrushes really sing at this bleak time of year as the sky grows dimpsy and when all other birds are silent? There's only one sure way to find out, and it's going to be chilly. Welcome back to the Dartmoor Podcast. In mid-December, Dartmoor's woods are a very peaceful place, a far cry from the cacophony of spring. And on a day like today, there's no sound other than the soft falling of the last of the leaves. But I was hoping there was still some life to be found, especially as, on top of my usual equipment, I'd bought a bridge camera, which would allow me to get some close-up nature shots like this. Look out, Attenborough, I'm coming for you. Or maybe not. I'm fully aware that I'm not bringing you cinematic excellence with this, but I think it's good enough to finally show you what I can see through my binoculars. Anyway, before too long, a sound led me to a flock of small garrulous birds roving around searching for food among the twigs. There is safety in numbers, so they use their sharp, insistent little calls to keep contact with the group as they work their way through the branches. On the ground, blackbirds, a species of thrush, rustled amongst the dry leaves looking for invertebrates to snack on. And as I went stomping clumsily through the forest, I inevitably ended up scaring quite a few, causing them to shoot off low and fast with that familiar pink, 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 pink call. Sometimes I wonder that if I really loved nature so much, I'd stay at home and stop bothering it. Now, the reason I'm setting off so many blackbird alarms today is simply because there are more of them about than normal. You see, as icy as it is here, it's even icier up in Scandinavia, and many millions of birds from there make the journey over to Britain for a milder winter. And with them come redwings, another species of thrush, but ones you'll only ever find here in the colder months, when they migrate over here in great flocks to feast on our rowan or holly berries. Here's a piece of information that will enrich your life greatly. Hear that thin seep sound? That's the call of a redwing, and one they make frequently while migrating at night. If you keep your ears open on a cold evening, you might hear this sound as flocks of them fly above you unseen in the darkness. So, birds call to warn each other of danger or to keep contact with the flock when feeding or on migration. But what about bird song? Well, this is used for a less cooperative end. It is to claim their territory and warn others of the same species to go and find their own patch. And outside of the breeding season, most birds don't bother, as singing takes up a lot of energy that could be spent actually searching for food or staying warm. Because when it comes down to it, the life of a wild animal is a mathematical balancing act of calories in versus calories out. But a few species do sing through the winter. The payoff of having your own territory full of food is sometimes worth the initial energy expenditure. Most notably, our festive favourite, the robin, sings all year long. And they are ferocious defenders of territory, happily blinding, maiming or killing other robins to keep their space for themselves. And they look so cute too. Who's a little psycho then? Who's a little psychopath? And here's another winter singer, a Dartmoor speciality, the dipper, a most unusual bird that looks a little like a Christmas pudding. The dipper, although clearly a songbird, rather akin to a large robin, actually dives into fast rushing streams to catch insects underwater. All rather wonderful, but I still hadn't found my main star, a singing song thrush. And without wanting this to get overly meta and become a podcast about making a podcast, I was beginning to worry. My episode wouldn't come together without this particular singing bird. I was 3 very cold camping trips into December and had heard nothing more than this brief snatch of song up on Hunter's tour. Perhaps you can just about hear from this snippet the quality of a song thrush's song. Loud and clear, not particularly musical, but distinctive, especially in the way it repeats each phrase 2 or 3 times. I always think they sound in some way tropical, like something you'd hear coming from the dense canopy of a rainforest. Other than listening carefully and keeping my eyes open, I had one more strategy for finding a song thrush: looking out for thrush anvils. Song thrushes love to eat snails, and they've evolved a trick to get through their shells, and that is to batter them against a rock. A thrush will use the same rock to brain all of its molluscs, and that's why a stone surrounded by snail shells is a good sign that a bird holds territory nearby. The best example of this I've ever heard was from Twitter, where a chap called Richard Broughton found an old glass beer bottle in the woods among a huge pile of shell fragments. The bottle was dated 1954, so it's possible that generations of thrushes have been battering snails to death in the same spot for over half a century. Kind of feels like a depressing metaphor for something. Talking metaphors, in the Darkling thrush, Hardy uses the singing song thrush as a metaphor for hope. It lets loose its rapturous singing when everything else seems dead. It is a reminder that everything in nature and life is a cycle and that the good times will return. So in a way, not finding the singing thrush for my silly little YouTube video took on a deep significance for me. If I couldn't find it, it meant, symbolically, there was no hope. In theory, finding a song thrush shouldn't be that difficult. It's a relatively common bird which really does sing on winter's evenings. It defends its territory all through the winter because it knows things will get better. The frozen, barren land will become useful again. The winter is temporary. A recession is temporary. Depression is temporary. Of course, I found one in the end, didn't I? So, please, Just as the thrush repeats himself, indulge me if you would in a second, and this time complete, performance of Hardy's poem. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre grey, and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. Tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyres, and all mankind pointed nigh and sought their household fires. The land-sharp features seemed to be the century's corpse outlent, his crypts the cloudy canopy, the wind his deathly net. The ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken hard and dry, and every spirit on the earth seemed fervorless as iron. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead, a full-hearted evensong of joy illimited. An ancient thrush fell gaunt and small, with glass beruffled plume, had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing blue. Such little cause for carolling, such ecstatic sound were written on terrestrial things afar and nigh around, that I must think there trembled through his happy good night out, some blessed hope whereof he knew, and I was on it. So, from the Dartmoor Podcast, I'd like to wish all of you a very sincere Happy New Year. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make 2023 a good one.